Today marks the Dragon Boat Festival, a traditional Chinese holiday that commemorates the life and death of famous Chinese scholar Kuo Yuan. I look forward to commemorating the festival by attending the highly anticipated 36th year Toronto International Dragon Boat Race Festival this Saturday, organized by the Toronto Chinese Business Association and GWN Dragon Boat. This year, the festival will welcome over 2,000 athletes and 80,000 visitors globally to the Toronto Island, showcasing Canada's leadership in promoting the sport of dragon boating, as well as Asian and Chinese Canadian cultural heritage. Let us continue to honor Asian Canadian legacy with the spirit of celebration, reflection, and solidarity within our communities. I wish everyone a safe and healthy Dragon Boat Festival. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Madam Speaker, today I would like to highlight a group local to Nelson, BC, the N2 Neighbourhood Network. Heading up this group is Tanya, a local business owner who is passionate about keeping Nelson safe and prosperous for future generations. Although local to Nelson, the N2 Neighbourhood Network has traveled around Kootenay, Columbia and BC to listen to business owners and communities alike regarding the increase in crime and drug use in our areas. By listening to folks, Tanya and the group can bring awareness to situations that are, frankly, getting out of hand. Needles in playgrounds, graffiti on public and private spaces, damage and theft from our small business owners. They meet publicly with all welcome to discuss solutions to bring these ideas to the authorities. It is appreciated to have such passionate community contributors openly trying to better our communities, seeing that public drug use and blatant disregard for property and people's safety is getting out of control. I look forward to supporting this group and seeing how it grows for a better future. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
This graduation season, and today I rise to congratulate all graduates, especially those in my riding of Halifax West. Cet accomplissement est le résultat.
This accomplishment is the culmination of years of hard work and of the start of a new chapter.
Graduates, their teachers, parents, extended family, and school administrators have been essential to their success. They've supported and believed in them, pushed them and inspired them, and been there to share their successes from elementary to high school and beyond. I want to give a shout out to the graduates of Charles P. Allen, Halifax West, Citadel High, École de Sommet, Bayview High, as well as our NSCC grads and those receiving a degree from the Mount St. Mary's, Dalhousie, and Kings. Congratulations, félicitations. Soyez curieux.
Stay curious.
Et faites votre place in our country and our world. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Bay James, Nunavik EU. Pardon me. The Honourable Member, I'll just correct your riding name. The Honourable Member for Abitibi Bay James, Nunavik EU. Mr. Speaker, I would like to tell you about a young man from our region who is our pride and joy in the sport of life-saving, Marc-Antoine Bernier. He is an inspiring and determined young man who I've had the pleasure of meeting a few times. He will be taking part in the World Life-Saving Championships in Australia in August. This will be his second appearance at the World Championships, as he also competed in Italy in 2022. For over 10 years now, Marc-Antoine has been training at the Dame-aux-Clés Life-Saving Club in Val-d'Or. Yesterday, he won the title of Canadian Life-Saving Champion in the 19 years and up category at the competition held in Victoria, British Columbia. In recent years, Marc-Antoine has also had the opportunity to take part in other major competitions, such as the Commonwealth Championships, where he was the only athlete from Quebec. Marc-Antoine, during the upcoming World Championship in Australia, I will be rooting for you, along with the people of Val-d'Or, Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik EU, and all of Quebec.
The Honourable Member from Ottawa Centre.
Speaker, I'm excited to rise today to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the Centertown Community Health Centre, a pillar of support and compassion in my community of Ottawa Centre since 1969. Over the past 5.5 years, CCHC has evolved into a multi-service, non-profit organization offering a wide array of services that cater to the diverse needs of the residents of Centertown. I know that personally, Speaker, because I had the great fortune of serving on the board of Centertown Community Health Centres for several years. Grâce à leur travail, la mission de CCHC.
Thanks to their work, the CCHC's mission goes beyond simply treating illness. Their holistic approach, which includes promoting healthy living, supporting mental health, tackling addiction, and fostering inclusive communities, ensures that every individual feels valued, supported, and empowered.
Many people to thank, but I want to congratulate all the staff for their hard work for serving so many in our community. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary Heritage.
Every day, I hear NDP Liberals make the disturbing claim that Canadians get more than they pay into the carbon tax. It's as if they're completely tone deaf to the voices of real Canadians. So I'm bringing the stories of everyday Calgarians right into this chamber. Here's the real impact of the carbon tax. For the Royal Canadian Legion 285, $12,144 this year. For Bitter Sisters Brewery, $8,200 last year. For Maria, her husband, and their two wonderful children, the burden is becoming absolutely unbearable. They buy expired food just to make ends meet, denying their kids the proper nutrition they need. Now they're on the brink of having to turn to food banks and the Wood Creek Community Food Pantry. My neighbors are suffering. NDP Liberals need to act. Axe the tax.
The honourable member from Brampton North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Brampton is forging its way as a sports hub in Canada. Bramptonians have been recognized for their achievement in sports around the world. I rise today to highlight a young athlete in my community who's setting records and proudly representing Canada on the world stage. Hardcover Singh Teja is an archer who recently set new records at the Youth and Master Pan American Championships. He achieved a gold medal in the U15 compound men's category, and both of his results from the qualification round and the final broke continental records. These records are recognized as both Pan American Championship records and records in the Americas. We hope that his record will stand for years to come. This is a historic moment for archery in Canada and a proud one for Jivanjot Singh Teja, a world-renowned archery coach who is also Hardcover's father and mentor. Congratulations, Hardcover.
The honourable member from Windsor-Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in the House of Commons to pay tribute to a legendary teacher, Mr. Gary Rankin, sometimes referred to as Mr. Riverside, for his love of teaching, 23 years, all of them at Riverside High School, but also for his work in the Riverside Minor Baseball Association. At Riverside High School, he coached sports teams, but where he truly left his mark was leading Riverside Student Parliament, teaching leaders of tomorrow how Parliament works and what public service is all about. Mr. Rankin retires this year, leaving behind a legacy of community service as a great teacher and a great role model. I know this, Mr. Speaker, because 3 of my staff at my constituency office and on Parliament Hill were once his students. To Mr. Riverside, we say congratulations on your retirement, thank you, and never goodbye, but perhaps this House now stands adjourned. Thank you.
The honourable member from Selkirk, Interlake Eastman.
After 9 years, this government has given hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to their lobbyist friends. The Department of National Defence handed out $72 million in consulting contracts last year alone. This includes the usual recipients like McKinsey, which were awarded a total of 13 non-competitive contracts. But that's not all. The Prime Minister's favorite company, SNC-Lavalin, is back. They're once again awarded contracts worth well into the 6 figures. When questioned about this at public accounts, neither the Defence Minister nor his officials could answer what these contracts were for. Meanwhile, our troops are being forced to visit food banks, couch surf, and have even started GoFundMe campaigns. Yet this Liberal NDP government has handed out millions in contracts to Liberal insiders and friends. Conservatives demand that the government treat our troops with the respect and decency they deserve. In an increasingly dangerous world, it won't be lobbyists who defend Canada, but the brave members of the Canadian Armed Forces who will be called upon to serve our great nation.
The honourable member from Mississauga East, Cooksville.
Speaker, in June we come together to celebrate Portuguese Heritage Month. a significant occasion where we acknowledge the remarkable contributions that Portuguese Canadians have made to this great country. Today, June 10th, is Portugal Day, observed both in Portugal and across the globe. As a Portuguese Canadian, this day holds a deep sense of pride and joy for me personally. It's a momentous occasion that allows us to reflect on our shared heritage and commemorate the achievements and traditions of Portugal. Since the first Portuguese immigrant pioneers to Canada, over the course of these 70-plus years, the descendants of these courageous pioneers have flourished and achieved greatness throughout this magnificent country. Today, let us take this opportunity to celebrate their accomplishments and honor the rich heritage and seamless integration of the Portuguese community in Canada. Feliz Dia de Portugal, Dia de Camões, Dia das Comunidades, Viva Canadá, Viva Portugal. Thank you. Obrigado.
The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canada's opioid and overdose crisis is raging out of control. The Prime Minister's solution to the crisis has been to flood our streets with taxpayer-funded drugs marketed as safe. Now a doctor from London, Ontario, where Canada's first safe supply program started, is sounding the alarm. Dr. Sharon Koivu, who initially supported the program, said that Safe Supply has worsened the addictions crisis in her community. She revealed that Safe Supply is being diverted and sold to organized crime and is leading to London having a 40% higher opioid death rate than the rest of Ontario. One of her patients actually moved from his apartment to a tent near a local pharmacy where Safe Supply pills were much cheaper and more abundant. This government's not fixing the opioid crisis. They're actively making it worse. For the good of all Canadians, the Prime Minister must put an end to his radical drug experiment today.
The honourable member from Lakeland.
After 9 years, poverty and food insecurity are emergencies in Canada. Last year, a record 2 million Canadians had to visit food banks in a single month. Food Bank Canada says nearly half of Canadians feel financially worse off since last year, and 25% can't afford to feed themselves. An Alberta Food Bank reported 4 times more working people have to access help than in 2022. Across Canada, 1 in 5 people say they or someone they know used a food bank in the last year. But the NDP Liberals still plan to quadruple their inflationary carbon tax over the next 6 years. The budget watchdog already proved their carbon tax is not worth the cost and drives up the price of everything for everyone. The majority of people are worse off with the carbon tax, but the Prime Minister won't listen. Like before, he's covering up reports that show the carbon tax's real cost to Canadians. Only common sense Conservatives will axe the tax for all for good and bring home lower prices so Canadians can afford to eat, house, heat and cool and drive themselves essentials in Canada.
The honourable member from Kitchener-Conestoga.
I have been studying French for 3 years, and I'd like to say that it is never too late to learn. I wish to thank my teacher, Jacinthe Parascent, and all the teachers who help us learn French or English here in Parliament. I would also like to thank the interpreters. They work hard to share their talent and to help us understand each other. I thank the interpreters for their patience with my pronunciation right now. I am proud that Canada is a bilingual country. I encourage anyone to learn English or French. If I can do it, you can too. Never stop learning. I'm proud to have read my statement in French. Thank you.
Bravo. The honourable member from Hamilton Centre.
I rise today to honor the life well lived of the brilliant mathematician, civil rights lawyer, professor, and peace movement activist, Mr. Peter Rosenthal, who passed May 25th at the age of 82. Mr. Rosenthal is remembered in the words of our mutual friend Max. Peter Rosenthal worked two very demanding full-time jobs. He came to Canada to teach mathematics at the University of Toronto in the 1960s, but once he arrived, spent an equal amount of time fighting injustice as a social justice lawyer in our criminal justice system. In his legal career, he'd take on pro bono cases representing the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, victims of police brutality, and other marginalized groups of society. Peter remained humble, treating everybody he met with kindness and curiosity, and never let his politics get in the way of his friendships. He is beloved by his family, and to honor Peter's life, take a moment to delight in the beauty of mathematics and speak out against injustice anywhere you find it. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in March, the extraordinary and dynamic David Labrec announced his retirement after 35 years in the teaching profession, including the last 10 years as Director General of the Alphonse Desjardins Sports Centre. When he retired, I wished him a happy retirement with plenty of rest and time to work on his garden. But after just 3 weeks of retirement, there was a big announcement. On April 3rd, the organizing committee for the 59th finals of the Quebec Games, to be held in Trois-Rivières from July 25th to August 2nd, 2025, by the way, well, they announced the appointment of David Labrec, recently retired, as general manager. With David at the helm, everyone can sleep easy knowing that the Quebec Games will go off without a hitch. Congratulations to the president of the Jeux de Québec in Trois-Rivières, Martin Leblanc, president of the organizing committee, and to his team for their excellent work, and good luck to David.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most basic responsibilities of any government is to protect the country from foreign threats. On this, the Prime Minister has been a complete failure. Last week, an intelligence report stated that an unknown number of parliamentarians have been, quote, witting participants in foreign interference in Canadian politics. What's even worse, though, is that the Prime Minister has known about these allegations for years and has done absolutely nothing about it. He's had years to establish a process to get to the bottom of which MPs have betrayed Canada, put in place a fair process for those accused while protecting intelligence sources. Instead, he's been quite happy to sit back and let it all happen. This is unacceptable. To maintain faith and trust in our democratic institutions, Canadians need the truth. That's why common sense Conservatives are demanding that the government expand the scope of the Foreign Interference Public Inquiry to receive all documents and information and reveal the names of which MPs have sold out their country. The Prime Minister and his Liberals might not have a problem with MPs working for other countries, but Conservatives do, and we're going to do everything we can to get Canadians the truth.
The Honourable Member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, today the movie A Child from War premieres on Parliament Hill. I would like to invite all Canadians to join us and discover the story of Gino Faranetti Bargaglia. Gino's heart-wrenching yet inspiring journey sheds light on the boundless hope and resilience of the human spirit amid the chaos of war. This 5-year-old boy from Torrice, Italy, had his life upended by the ravages of World War II. In June 1944, compassionate members of the Royal Canadian Army Services Corps conducting resupply tasks found a famished young Italian boy close to the battle ruins. For the next 10 months, Gino found shelter, nourishment, and care amongst his Canadian guardians. This movie highlights the shared heritage and enduring strength that defines and connects Canada and Italy. It honors the brave Canadian men and women in uniform who fight for freedom and democracy, past and present. Mr. Speaker, in honoring Gino's story, we celebrate the values of duty, compassion, and courage as demonstrated by the Canadian soldiers, the perseverance that unites us, and the freedom we enjoy today, thanks to the sacrifices of the past. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Questions orales. L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, last week we learned via the report of the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians that some members had, and I quote, semi-wittingly or wittingly participated in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics. This is an extremely disturbing revelation, which is why we need to know who these members are who are collaborating with hostile foreign countries. Will the Prime Minister, yes or no, reveal the names of these members and the unacceptable actions of which they are accused? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. I'm a little bit surprised because the person sitting next to him, the parliamentary leader, sent me a letter over the weekend suggesting that the HoC Commission should look at these matters, that it was the appropriate forum with the precautions in place. The House is discussing today a motion from our friends at the Bloc Québécois that we will support, and I think it's an important time for Parliament to come together and to support the work of the HoC Commission, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
Then I have
the Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect their government here and in the Senate to work in their interest. I'm pleased to hear the Minister's answer, but I'd like for him to confirm if officially the Prime Minister will reveal to Commissioner Ugg the names of elected members and perhaps senators who have been involved in working with foreign states. Will he give the names or not?
Minister.
The Honourable Member of Public Safety. Once again, Mr. Speaker, our colleague should consult the person sitting on his left. He knows full well that the HoC Commission has access to exactly that type of information. The HoC Commission has access to all of the documents that the Committee of Parliamentarians consulted. The government has already been in touch. Privy Council officials have been in touch with the HoC Commission to discuss how we can advance on this matter. This is the responsible way to do things, and to rise in the House and to ask for a list of names to be revealed. He knows full well that's irresponsible, and we won't do that.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Certain members of this House acted in the best interest of hostile foreign regimes interfering in Canada's democracy. This is a disgusting betrayal of Canadians who elected us to represent them in this place. We as MPs are supposed to serve Canadians, not foreign hostile actors. Why is this Liberal NDP government fighting to protect MPs' names, collaborating in the best interest of hostile foreign regimes and not Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'll repeat what I said a moment ago in French. We agree with members of this House that the appropriate forum to look at these matters is the Commission, already set up and operating. Set up, I would remind colleagues, with the unanimous support of all parties in this House. The HoC Commission has access to all of the documents that the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians looked at. Officials from the Privy Council office have already been in touch with the HoC Commission to determine the best way forward. We think that's a responsible way to proceed, not simply standing up and illegally announcing a list of names like my colleague suggests.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Boo-hoo, get over it was the most disgusting response from this cover-up coalition. This government turned a blind eye to foreign interference to protect their own partisan interests. They refused to hand over documents to that commission, and now they won't release the names of the MPs in this House doing dirty work for foreign hostile regimes. Canadians need to know who these MPs are. Is this Liberal NDP government really going to let sitting members of this House working against the interest of Canadians run in the next election?
Before the Honourable Minister responds, I'm just going to encourage all members, please, not to express their voices unless they are recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the government will be supporting the motion before the House today brought by the Bloc Québécois, asking the HoC Commission to examine this very matter. We think that's the appropriate way to do it. The Conservatives are pretending that you can stand up and release a list of names. Mr. Speaker, I asked the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP, Mark Flynn, this morning, what would happen if I stood up and announced a list of names like my colleagues are asking me to do, and he said I would be subject to criminal prosecution. So guess what, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to do that.
The Honourable... Order. The Honourable Member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
They've had years to do something and they've done nothing. And speaking of cover-ups, Mr. Speaker, there's another one. Last week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer revealed that this government is hiding a secret carbon tax report that proves a majority of Canadians pay more into this scam than what they get back in these phony rebates. But this Liberal NDP government did what it does best. They put a gag order on the PBO, keeping the truth from Canadians. When will this Liberal NDP cover-up coalition lift the gag order and release the report to confirm what Canadians already know, that this Prime Minister and his carbon tax scam are not worth the cost?
Once again, I'm going to remind members to please not take the floor unless they are recognized as speaker to do so, so that we can hear the questions and we can hear the answers. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We respect the work of the PBO, who provides independent analysis on the government. Conservatives, unfortunately, are misleading Canadians yet again. Our government has and will continue to support the Parliamentary Budget Officer to fulfill his role and his office. The report correctly confirmed that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back in rebate than they pay in fuel charge. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said that carbon pricing is the least disruptive measure to use to fight climate change. Instead of misleading Canadians, Mr. Speaker, Conservative should take math classes over the summer and come up with a real plan for the economy and climate change.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Today we're debating a Bloc Québécois motion to expand the HoC Commission's mandate to investigate foreign-influenced members. Why did we table this motion? Because the Liberals are consistently unable to show leadership on the issue of interference. They're always lagging behind, and frankly, they should be embarrassed that the Bloc Québécois has had to take this initiative again today. They are the government. Why do they always have to be up against the wall before they move on foreign interference? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I thank my friend from La Prairie for the question. Good news, the work I've done together with him and other parliamentary leaders last summer led to the HoC Commission, and we believe, furthermore, that the terms of reference that we negotiated with our friend from La Prairie allows them to do the work that is in the block motion. We will support the motion at the vote tomorrow, and we will work with the HoC Commission to find the best way to move forward. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Last week, in question period, when I asked what this government was going to do to ensure that no one in the House was working for foreign powers, the Deputy Prime Minister responded by talking about interest rates. The Bloc is concerned because of this threat to democracy, and she gave us murky spin. It speaks volumes about the Liberals' lack of seriousness. It's not a big deal, according to them. Well, yes, it is a very big deal. Will the government cooperate fully with the HoC Commission once its mandate has been expanded? Our democracy depends on it. The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. The answer is yes. And as I've said, it's a discussion that senior officials from the Privy Council have undertaken over the weekend with the HoC Commission. We will always be there to ensure that the HoC Commission has everything it needs to shed light on these circumstances.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
The Prime Minister has confirmation that MPs knowingly worked with foreign governments to undermine Canada. He's known for 11 months and done nothing. All the while, Canadians have been harassed. Canadians have been threatened. A Canadian citizen was killed, all linked to foreign governments. Why has this Prime Minister failed to protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I thank our colleague, the Leader of the NDP, for the question. Obviously, the most important responsibility of any government is to protect its citizens. Far from not taking this matter seriously, our government has been the only government in the history of Canada to set up a series of measures to detect, disrupt, and prevent foreign interference. We're very pleased that members of this House are working collaboratively to support government legislation before the House right now to give additional tools, create additional criminal offences, to hold those to account who might seek to interfere in our democratic institutions, and we'll continue to always do this important work.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Known for 11 weeks and done nothing. Depuis 11 semaines.
For 11 weeks, the Prime Minister has known the names of members potentially working with foreign governments, such as India and China. For 11 weeks, he has known about MPs potentially assisting a government that may be responsible for the killing of a Canadian citizen. Why hasn't the Prime Minister done anything in those 11 weeks? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, our government is always working to protect democratic institutions strengthen the measures that are necessary to ensure the integrity of our electoral process. Law enforcement, CSIS, are always working and take their responsibilities seriously. I have full confidence in the national security agencies, and I have full confidence in the HoC Commission to examine precisely the scenario my colleague brought up.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, here's the facts. 1 in 5 Canadians knows someone accessing a food bank. 25% of Canadians are going hungry, and 44% feel financially worse off than just 1 year ago. Canadians aren't doing well, despite this Prime Minister gaslighting them. And it gets worse. Now, there's a PBO report that reveals the true cost of the carbon tax. So, why aren't they allowing the PBO to release it? He's been gagged, and now we want to know why.
Yeah. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the only people in this city who seem to be gagged are Conservative MPs. They're not allowed to express their true views when it comes to ending a woman's right to choose. And none of them are allowed to express a view on tax fairness. But Mr. Speaker, tomorrow they're going to have to stop deflecting and evading and take a stand. We'll see if they support fairness for every generation.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
Well, thank you for that perfect example of deflecting. Again, this is not hearsay. This is a letter sent by the minister's office to the PBO, okay? He is saying to the PBO, this is the real cost of the carbon tax. Conservatives have been saying for months to axe the tax because we know it drives up the cost of literally everything. It is causing misery. The Liberals say that's not true. So if it's not true, why the gag order? Why are they not allowing the PBO to release this carbon tax cover-up that shows the true cost of what it's costing Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we believe in investing in affordability for Canadians with programs like a national school food program, dental care, a national system of early learning and childcare, and we're going to pay for it in a responsible way with tax fairness. So I would like to invite that member to lift her own personal gag order and come clean with Canadians on whether she supports tax fairness or whether she supports tax breaks for the wealthiest among us.
Fair question. The honourable member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Canadians are not being fooled by this Prime Minister or that Deputy Prime Minister. They know the carbon tax is making their lives more unaffordable. Last week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed that a secret government report shows that the carbon tax costs Canadians more than they get back. The Prime Minister has forced the PBO to sign a gag order so that he can't share that report. Canadians deserve the truth. When will this government come clean with Canadians and release the report?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the people who are not going to be able to fool Canadians for very much longer are these Conservatives. For days and days, for weeks and weeks, they have been dithering and deflecting and evading when it comes to our proposed measures on capital gains. Tomorrow, they're going to have to take a stand. So I invite the member opposite to lead the way by lifting her own personal gag order and saying what she believes.
Bravo. I'm going to ask members again, who've been really pretty good today, is to please just not take the floor until they are recognized by the chair. I'm certain we all want to hear the question from the honourable member. The honourable member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Well, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that after 9 years, this Prime Minister is just not worth the cost or the corruption. He is desperate to cover up his own secret report, which shows that Canadians are worse off under his carbon tax regime. He knows it, we know it, and and Canadians know it. When will this Prime Minister lift his gag order on the Parliamentary Budget Officer and release his report?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday, surprise of surprises, that very member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek, informed, I'm sure for the first time, her own caucus colleagues, but indeed the entire House of Commons, that she picks and chooses which parts of the Conservative platform she runs on. This whole party, we know, ran on the price on pollution in the last election, but this member stood up and told us that she really didn't. So maybe she could tell us right now which parts of the Conservative platform she doesn't approve of today.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Canadians are not buying what this Prime Minister is selling because they know the carbon tax is not worth the cost. Canadians can't put gas in their car, food on their table. They know the real pain of the carbon tax. So does the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who confirmed that the Liberals have an economic analysis of the carbon tax that shows the real pain of that tax, but they refuse to release it. I wonder why. Maybe because it confirms what Conservatives and Canadians have been saying all along, that the carbon tax isn't worth the cost. Right. Will the Prime Minister unmuzzle his budget watchdog, table a report, and admit to Canadians that the carbon tax is all pain, no gain?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the people who I sincerely believe need to be unmuzzled are the Conservative MPs. I think that it is time for Canadians to know which Conservative MPs believe a woman's right to choose should be ended in Canada. And it is definitely time for Canadians to know whether Conservative MPs believe in tax fairness or whether they believe in tax breaks for their wealthy friends. Tomorrow, we'll find out.
Yeah. The Honourable Member from Foothills.
I can see why the Liberals don't want to answer this question. The Prime Minister tried to sell this fairy tale that Canadians are better off paying the carbon tax to Canadian mayors last week. He got booed off the stage. Even big city mayors know that the carbon tax isn't worth the cost. It fuels homelessness and food insecurity. Food banks are saying visits are up 50% and they can't even keep up with demand. Exactly. There's a secret Liberal report that understands or shows that the Liberal carbon tax is not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister table that report, end the carbon tax cover-up, and admit to Canadians that the carbon tax is all pain, no gain?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is fond of making inflammatory statements. He called our system of early learning and childcare a slush fund. He called co-op housing Soviet-style housing. And he called brave Ukraine dismissively a faraway land. But he is silent on one issue, and that is tax fairness. Tomorrow, he's not going to be able to dither anymore. Every single Conservative is going to have to take a stand. We'll see what they really believe.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. We need to revisit the Auditor General's 3 disturbing reports. She paints a picture of a total loss of control over public funds. Under the Liberals, there has been an explosion of untendered contracts with no explanation. Consultants have gotten rich without accountability and without anyone even knowing whether or not they delivered the required services. Public funds were allocated to ineligible projects. How is it possible to lose control to such an extent without a single person being held accountable? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for asking that question. It gives me the opportunity to remind the House that the Auditor General's work and the work of all other institutions is important, and that is why the report she tabled last week was well received. The report puts forward observations that are about identical to what we've had for about a year now, and for this reason we will continue to do the work that we've been doing for a year. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Let's recap. Public funds spent untendered and unmonitored on companies that we don't even know whether they fulfilled their mandate. Sustainable development money diverted to interests having nothing to do with the environment. No decision-making at the top, despite minutes confirming these problems and warnings from whistleblowers. Conflicts of interests, ethical problems. I have a riddle for the Liberals. Am I talking about the AG's reports, or am I taking stock of the Prime Minister's career? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for her question, but honestly, Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit surprised. Because in fact, that criticism usually comes from the Conservative Party. As she knows very well, on SDTC, this is an organization that was created by Parliament. The chair of the board of directors stepped down and more as well. But more importantly, we've changed the model to continue to send money to small businesses that fight climate change. Many of them are in Quebec, Mr. Speaker. So on this side of the House, we will always do what's needed to ensure governance and support our small businesses throughout the country. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. The Auditor General's reports, especially the one on McKinsey, do much more than expose specific problems. They are about the Prime Minister's entire record. These reports portray a government that has no qualms about breaking its own rules, a government that doesn't sweat the ethics, a constantly negligent government under which a culture of complacency and waste of public funds has emerged. In its report on McKinsey, the AG points to a widespread problem. How can this widespread problem be resolved when, in the end, it is merely the result of the Prime Minister's leadership style? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you once again to my colleague. I'll note the same things I summarized earlier. The work of the Auditor General is essential on this issue, but on many other issues where her guidance and recommendations change the way we can improve services to Canadians, including by increasing confidence in processes. We have many other things to do as well. For example, continuing to invest in the middle class. There was a good announcement last week. For the first time, interest rates have gone down.
Not the Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Canadians are struggling to afford food, and the NDP Liberal government doesn't care. From their carbon tax to red tape to the ban for plastics for produce, every single bad policy that this government announces hurts our farmers and makes food more expensive. One farmer paid over $25,000 in a single month in carbon tax alone. Farmers can't absorb these costs. And no, they don't get a rebate check. So when will the NDP Liberals get out of the way and pass Bill C-234 in its original form?
Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we do believe it is essential to make investments to make life more affordable for Canadians. That's why we have put forward the most ambitious housing program in Canadian history. That's why we are making dental care available to 2 million Canadians already. That's why we've created a national system of early learning and childcare. And we know it's important to pay for this in a fiscally responsible way. So we have a plan for tax fairness. But the Conservatives prefer austerity and helping their wealthy pals. Tomorrow they're going to have to admit it.
Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, another fairy tale from a Liberal who clearly doesn't understand food production. The government can't deny that paying $25,000 in a single month in carbon tax is punishing this farmer. The NDP Liberals live in la-la land if they don't think that these costs get passed on to Canadian families. So when will this government leave fantasy land, stop hurting our farmers, and pass Bill C-234 in its original form?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, Canadian farmers know, but this member apparently does not, that 95% of all farm fuels are already exempt from the price on pollution. And as for Bill C-234, the very tortuous parliamentary process that this party has submitted that bill to. I'm glad that my counterpart, their House Leader, has finally relented and allowed it to be debated today, but we'll see how the opposition determines to go forward on that bill that they presented and they are responsible for.
Yeah, good point.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the Bloc Liberal coalition continues to make life more expensive for Canadian families and farmers. By allowing the Senate to gut Bill C-234, they are contributing to the demise of a generation of farmers. The Bloc and the Prime Minister are not worth the cost. Food prices have never been so high, and food bank use has increased by 25% in the last 6 months in Beauce. Will the government commit today to vote according to the will of Canadians and pass Bill C-234 in its original form? The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. Mr. Speaker, farmers in Beauce are very smart people. They know very well that 95% of farming fuels are exempt from all form of price on pollution. This is a message that seems to have escaped their member, however, so I will give him a reminder that the bill he is talking about will not be able to assist those farmers. I look forward to seeing the process that the Conservative Party will use to try and get this bill through.
The Honourable Member from London Fanshawe.
Steelworkers Local 2918 at IMT Defense are proud to build the equipment Ukraine needs to defend itself against Putin's illegal invasion. But they're underpaid and can't afford food or rent. Despite receiving millions in taxpayers' dollars and sky-high profits, their employer hasn't been treating these workers with the respect they deserve. They've been on strike since early June to demand fair wages. When will the Liberals finally stand up for Canadian workers and ensure tax dollars go to good-paying unionized jobs?
The Honourable Minister for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, we are aware of the situation. We will stay on top of it and we will keep the member informed. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, big telecom companies are adding to the struggles of women and gender-diverse people fleeing violence. While telecom CEOs lay off staff and give themselves huge bonuses, a recent report found that Bell, Rogers, and TELUS force extra fees and long wait times on victims trying to change their phone numbers or leave shared plans with their abusers. When will the Liberals stop being soft on telecom's giants and force them to improve services for people fleeing violence?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for a very important question. I found the situation she's describing as unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. As she knows, we have been very tough on telecoms CEOs around the country, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, despite these conservatives who are laughing, this is a very serious question, Mr. Speaker. This is about protecting women. This is about protecting consumers. This is about being Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we'll follow up and make sure that we rectify the situation.
The Honourable Member from St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, if we were creating our tax system from scratch, what choices would we make as Canadians? Would we give the greatest tax advantages to those who make the most money, or would we insist on paying a fair share to keep Canada strong? The next generation of young Canadians across this country are leading the way in telling us that they want a fair and forward-looking Canada. Can the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance tell Canadians how this government is making this vision a reality?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians believe in fairness. Many of the wealthiest Canadians make most of their money through investments, and they can often wind up paying a lower overall tax rate than a nurse or a carpenter. That's not fair. That's why today our government is introducing changes that will result in a small number of well-off Canadians paying a little more tax. This will make our tax system fairer. That is fairness for all generations.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Speaker, the Prime Minister was warned multiple times about security threats from foreign interference. He was told measures to protect something as fundamental as our democracy were insufficient, and he repeatedly failed to do anything about it. We now know that members of this House knowingly assisted hostile foreign states against Canada's interests, and the government hides behind national security and cabinet confidence while these members are still allowed to sit in caucus, sit in this House, and serve their communities second. They've redacted and withheld documents from the HoC Commission. So will they hand over all of the documents unredacted with names?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier in question period, our government has always collaborated with the HoC Commission and senior public servants who are responsible for decisions around redactions work collaboratively and constructively at all times. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, obviously the government will ensure that the HoC Commission has access to all of the documents necessary to do the important work that we've asked them to do. That's been our position since we created the HoC Commission, and that will continue to be the work we'll do.
Member from Thornhill.
A really long way to say no. Canadians want to know who is working against.
I'm going to just stop the honourable member just so that we don't injure either our interpreters or other members who are listening on the earphones. If there's any earphones which are near a microphone, I just ask members if they could put them in the proper place to make sure that we don't get that Larson effect. The honourable member from Thornhill from the top, please.
Saying that is a very long way to say no. And Canadians deserve to know who is working against Canada. Right. Their responses have been a convoluted finger-pointing exercise of secret committees, or worse, dismissive, boo-hoo, get-over-it statements from someone who once sat on the very committee that just...
I'm going to just stop the member once again. I see that members are not having any translation services. I'm going to continue talking until... Do they hear a translation at this time? Do we hear translation at this time, members? Or is there any translation into French? Yes, there is. I'm going to ask, once again, the honourable member to start from the top.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve to know who is working against Canada, and the best way...
I'm just going to ask the honourable member, we seem to be having some translation difficulties. Could I ask the honourable l'honorable député de Joliette?
Monsieur le Président, l'interprète signale qu'il y a eu un effet Larson. Donc, il y a un problème. Ils ne sont plus en mesure d'effectuer l'interprétation.
There has been a feedback in the interpretation booth, which will prevent interpretation services from being offered.
Surtout les députés qui ont la parole et peut-être leurs voisins, pouvez-vous vous assurer que vos... For the members of Parliament who are asking the questions, I'm just going to ask for the neighbours as well, just to make sure.
Interpretation services have been interrupted due to an acoustic incident.
And then we will... I'm going to just stop for a second. Chers collègues, il faut qu'on suspende les travaux de la Chambre pour quelques instants, just pour faire une mise à jour. Ladies and dear colleagues, we're just going to suspend the House for a couple of minutes as we explore further on this issue.